Today I want to talk about a slightly controversial topic. In my cycling group of friends, there are several people who swear by tubeless tires and run them on almost every bike, but there are also several who don't want to have anything to do with them. In this video, I will try to answer the question, are tubeless tires worth the hassle they usually involve? I will begin by describing my experience with tubeless tires, then discuss where I landed with tubeless on my bikes. Lastly, at the end, I'll offer some advice on getting tubeless tires to seal and stay sealed. I think like most people, when I first heard of tubeless tires, I thought it was some sort of marketing gimmick. I mean, how is air supposed to stay inside a tire without a tube? As time went by, I saw more and more people using them and realized they were a real thing. Just as a quick summary, the tube is replaced with liquid sealant, which helps form an airtight seal inside the tire and keeps the air inside. The sealant also helps seal small punctures that would previously force you to replace or patch your tube. The theory is nice and all, but I got my first hands-on experience with tubeless tires when I bought this specialized crux. The previous owner upgraded the wheels to Ultegras and put tubeless tires on them. I thought the ride quality of the bike and the tires especially was fantastic. The tires were only 34mm wide, but at lower pressure felt as comfortable as much thicker tires. I was very much encouraged by this experience, so I decided to try tubeless on my other bike, which I ride even more than the crux, my Surly Traveler's Check. I loved the Ultegra wheels and bought myself another set to use on this bike. One of the great features of this wheel in particular is they don't have any spoke holes in the outer wall. This means I don't have to worry about taping the inside to get an airtight seal, and that's one less place to worry about the seal failing. For this project, I used these 40mm wide WTB Venture tires. They sealed no problem, but it took a while to get them to stop leaking significant pressure overnight. I rode these tires over a bunch of surfaces and I thought they were a great improvement to this bike as well. The ride was smooth and the tires were grippy on loose surfaces, which is something I wasn't getting from my smooth non-tubeless tires before. So far that's 2 for 2. But then there was this bike. It's truly nothing special, an older aluminum roadie with mid-tier components. But it was one of the first bikes I ever built. I've considered selling it many times over the years, but I could never quite bring myself to do it. For one thing, I really liked the fit. Secondly, it was light and fast but still capable of carrying significant weight. The leather saddle and rack made it a decent candidate for longer rides as well. The only thing it didn't have was tire clearance. This old school road setup could barely clear a 28mm wide tire with a millimeter or two of clearance on most sides. Because I didn't have the heart to sell it, I kept trying to figure out a way to make it ride better. Finally, I decided to try tubeless tires. I thought the lower pressure might make the 28s feel more comfortable than typical high pressure road tires. I didn't have another set of rim brake tubeless compatible wheels, so I decided to go ghetto tubeless. By the way, that's not my term, but the industry term for using non-tubeless parts with sealant to hopefully get all the benefits of tubeless without upgrading all your gear. The tires I had on there were tubeless compatible, but these Mavic rims were not. I sealed up the inside with some tubeless tape, and the setup actually worked pretty well on the first attempt. The tires seemed to hold pressure well, and I rode them around a bit in this new tubeless arrangement. Eventually though, the seal failed and I got a flat. I tried pumping it back up, but it wouldn't hold. After a while, I decided I needed better reliability out of this bike, and I put tubes back into both wheels. So where do I stand on tubeless now? Is it worth the hassle? Well, I have come to 3 conclusions. Conclusion number 1. Ghetto tubeless is not worth it. Even tires and rims designed to work together can sometimes be hard to set up. I would not go and make the process even harder on myself with non-tubeless gear. I think the tubeless rims play an important role in keeping the tire bead in the right place, and I wouldn't want to set up tubeless without them. I think sometimes you might get lucky and it'll work out, but I need higher reliability out of my tires, so I won't be going ghetto tubeless again. Conclusion number 2. Tubeless is not worth it for skinny road tires. Even when the tubeless setup was working as intended on my road bike, I couldn't truly get the air pressure low enough to enjoy the benefits of tubeless. Tires in the 23 to 28mm range, even tubeless, need to be pumped up to a hard enough air pressure that the ride quality difference is not enough to justify the effort. At least not for me. I found I needed to run them above 50 psi to avoid bottoming out on every curb and pothole, which would quickly destroy the rims. The added flat protection is nice, but I probably wouldn't go through the hassle of tubeless setup for road tires in the future. Conclusion number 3. For bikes with tires 32mm or thicker, I think tubeless is indeed worth it. The flat protection is a nice plus, but I rarely get flats on my fatter tire bikes anyway. The flat protection, in addition to the softer ride though, makes for an excellent combo. I find tubeless tires run at lower pressure are grippier and handle looser ground a little better. Tubeless allows tires to be a little more supple and comfortable since they don't need Kevlar belts or similar tech for flat protection. I find tires in the 30 to 40 mil range to have the ride quality of a thicker tire when I run them tubeless and at lower pressure. It's true, they take a bit of effort to set up, but I think these benefits are worth it. The other benefit of tubeless is they are backwards compatible. If for any reason you can't get your tire to seal while you're on the road, you can just put a tube in like you would have done with tube tires anyway. Anyway, that's where I stand with tubeless tires for my bikes and style of riding. I do a lot of long touring rides, bike camping, rail trails, and things like that. If you do a lot of racing or mountain biking or some other style of riding, your needs might vary, and your decision to go tubeless might differ from mine. If you do decide to go tubeless, here are some tips that help me get my bike sealed. This is not going to be a how-to guide. There's plenty of better guides out there for more experienced folks. I'm just going to share a few tips that help me get my bike set up tubeless. Tip number 1. Don't skip the soap. Most guides will tell you to spray some soap on your tires when you're trying to get them seated. At first I thought this was just to help find leaks once you've got your tires already sealed, but the soap actually helps get the tires sealed in the first place. The soap seems to help the tires slide into place without interfering with the sealant. Keep a small spray bottle of soap water on hand to help get your tires sealed the first time. Tip number 2. Skip the valve core. I tried to get my tires sealed a few times without removing the valve core and found it nearly impossible. The valve core creates a lot of resistance of airflow into the tire, and you're better off trying without it. It's fine if you lose all your pressure without the valve core after you pump the tire up. Just replace the core and pump the tires back up. Once you have your tire beads in place, you should easily be able to inflate the tire with the core in place. Tip number 3. Ride the tires. I struggled with one of my tubeless setups because the seal seemed fine at first. I spun the wheels around a bunch to distribute the sealant, but a few hours later the tires were almost completely flat. I found actually putting the wheels into the bike and riding around the block helped to get a better seal, and the tires held up their pressure for much longer afterwards. Tip number 4. Inflator can. If you can't get enough pressure into your tires with a floor pump, you don't necessarily have to buy a compressor. A few companies make these cans which hold a lot of air at a high pressure and then release it all at once to help stubborn tires seal. I use this one all the time and it helped me seat quite a few tires. Anyway, these are my thoughts and tips on tubeless tires. Please leave a comment if this was useful and let me know if you're riding tubeless tires or if you think it's more hassle than it's worth. Thanks for watching.